Before we get into today's episode, I thought I'd show you what DALL-E 3, which is OpenAI's newest iteration of its image generating technology, thinks that white vigilantes confronting a northern traveler in South Carolina in 1860 looks like. I don't know if they think it's Hamilton the musical we're doing here or what. But anyway, so I'm having to stick with Midjourney for my AI images. And some of them are going to be weird because it just only understands so much. So bear with the quirks that you see. Most of them aren't too bad, but some of them are pretty weird. On with the episode. On November 23rd, 1860, abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison's newspaper, The Liberator, ran a letter from William C. Wood, a Boston area resident who had just returned from an aborted, rather scary business trip to rural South Carolina, of all places. I arrived at Blackville, 90 miles from Charleston, at 8 o'clock on Monday evening, November 5th. Stepping upon the platform, I was almost immediately surrounded by a group of young men. Finding that they were a vigilance committee, I answered their questions until they asked, "What are your political opinions? Are you in favor of Mr. Lincoln's election?" My answer was, "I beg your pardon, gentlemen, I have nothing to say to you on political matters." They asked me to stop, examined my trunk and a chest containing my library until late Monday night, and for an hour or two Tuesday morning. The examination was conducted with politeness and delicacy. They found little against me, nothing, as they told me, which materially changed their impression. However, I was a northern man, that was sufficient. The chief of the Vigilance Committee told me privately that such was the feeling that were it not for several circumstances, I should not have been let go with the whole skin. However, they would send me home safe, pay my passage, and keep my books until the money was refunded. This feeling, so strong then, gradually changed. A feeling sprung up and gained ground that I should be sent on to my employer. The meeting broke up without being able to agree. I was informed of this by one of the members who advised me to proceed. I told him no, I'm not going to run away. I was stopped officially, and I must have official notice that I may leave. This I presently received. Thus the storm, I thought, had passed away. At Barnwell, 10 miles distant, I enjoyed the hospitality of the Baptist minister. In the afternoon, my employer, from a neighboring town, called. While conversing with him, I was unexpectedly waited upon by gentlemen who wished my attendance in the village. We proceeded to the courthouse. I shall not be likely to forget that occasion. Many circumstances invested it with interest. It was Barnwell Courthouse from which, years ago, under memorable circumstances, they sent away the venerable Judge Hoare. So I just want to jump in real quick and explain who Samuel Hoare was. In 1844, Massachusetts had sent him as an emissary to Charleston to protest the fact that northern black seamen were routinely being imprisoned there while their ships were in dock. And he had gotten expelled, and this obviously provoked extreme outrage in the North. It was an assembly composed of the most respectable men of the place. These were the educated men, one minister at least, and the physicians of the town. There were the principal slaveholders, and a large planter of 5,000 acres sat in the chair. The proceedings were parliamentary and courteous throughout. I stood at the table, a little Massachusetts man, the shortest, I believe, in my class at Harvard, and interrogatories were put me one by one. What were my sentiments on slavery, its extension, Mr. Lincoln's election, the higher law, irrepressible conflict, etc., etc.? I answered them fairly. When I could reply with effect, I did so. When I could not, I declined to answer. Speeches were made, for and against. All expressed their admiration at the able and honest manner in which I had borne myself throughout. Many who did so said that convictions of duty compelled them to vote against my stay. The vote stood 22-9. The Vigilance Committee generously raised the money on the spot to pay my expenses home. Thus far I had met only courteous and considerate treatment. After a day spent under the roof of Reverend Mr. Perry, himself a slaveholder, I returned to Blackville. On the train I was insulted by a fellow who dragged me into the Negro car. There was no one to say nay, and persisted in sitting by my side, threatened me with a whipping, paddling, and hanging, and who, on my refusal to answer his questions, drew his knife to cut off my ear. A pretended friend offered me a pistol, told me I should need it before I reached Charleston. Of course I declined it. At Bamberg's, where they had hanged a man shortly before, the fellow went out and called the Vigilance Committee, several of whom entered and seized me and endeavored by main strength to force me from the car to hang me. I had good hold and they couldn't move me, but they tore my coat badly in the struggle. The cars, moreover, were starting. They tried in vain to get them stopped and were forced to desist. The conductor quietly extended all the protection, as I think, which he thought safe for him to do. Arriving at Charleston, he procured me an officer who conducted me to the guardhouse. It was not safe, the chief of police told me, to go abroad until the boat was about to start. They congratulated me on my narrow escape. Next day, the officer attended me to the boat. Here ends the story. It is only just to say that in addition to the election and secession excitement, the people have been exasperated by several cases of well poisoning and slave arming. But extreme abolitionists are not the only Northern men who have fanned the excitement. The editors of these journals North, who have misrepresented the designs of the Republican Party, have done quite as much, I think, to procure the result. What mischief makers! Even the personnel of the Republican candidates has been misrepresented. Why, in South Carolina, they really believe that Senator Hamlin, Vice President-elect, is a mulatto man. If I have not already left the impression, I wish to state that I have the best reasons for saying that my return is owing to no imprudence on my part. I could not change any act done or recall any sentence uttered before the two vigilance committees. I say this for two reasons. First, in justice to myself. Second, to show that no Northern man with Northern principles, however prudent and well-intentioned, is wanted in South Carolina today. I was told that distinctly many times. Such, Mr. Editor, is a brief but fair account of my reception in South Carolina and my return home. I have at last reached a state where I can express openly the suppressed joy and satisfaction which I felt on South Carolina ground on hearing that a new and better era has begun in our history. So if you've been following this channel for a while, I think you know that this isn't a North good, South bad channel or a South good, North bad channel. I try to look at the nuances on all sides as best I can. But this episode does not make the South look great. I think it shows, how slavery, besides, being bad in and of itself, just how toxic it was to the culture, how it just really poisoned the environment, the paranoia it induced in so many white Southerners, and the total disregard for the constitutional principles that they believed themselves to be more devoted to than the North. I mean, where's the freedom of speech in this story? Where's even the freedom of association in this story? On the other hand, if you're a Northerner in 1860 reading, this guy's letter, I don't know how you would come away thinking, wow, we really need to force South Carolina to stay part of this country. What could possibly go wrong? But I'd love to know what you think. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. And as always, I've got more context on my website, which you can click the link in the description below to get to. And I hope you help this channel keep growing. Hit the like button, subscribe, share with anyone who might be interested. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.